Hey everybody, Justin White here, and you're about to listen to episode 8 of Power Forward. Our guest is Monica Haider, Vice President of Engagement. If you've ever wanted to know what it takes to build a brand as an individual or as a company, we've got you covered. Monica takes us through all things brand, including a brand exercise that will help you become more successful. Monica is big on giving direct feedback, and she'll explain how leaders can navigate those tough conversations, as well as the benefits that come when you're 100% honest with the people on your team. All that and more coming up right now on Power Forward. The primary purpose of this podcast series is to inform, entertain, and educate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast series do not constitute legal or other professional advice, opinions, or endorsements of any kind.
This is Power Forward.
Okay, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White and Mateen Cleaves with you. Mateen, I want to start off today by asking you a question.
Okay.
When is the last time that you told somebody what you really think of them? And I mean what you really think of them, 100% honest truth.
That's easy for me.
Okay.
I would say last week at an AAU tournament.
Okay.
My son.
Oh, boy. Now, was this directly related to his play in the game or something else?
No, it was his attitude.
Okay.
And I didn't like it. Then I told him, I don't know if I can say on air, but I ripped him a new one.
All right, one of those dad/coach moments that you got to have sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I didn't like his body language, so I had to tell him exactly what I felt about him at that time.
You had to tell him exactly like it is, perhaps.
For sure, you know it.
Which ties in nicely to our guest because she tells you exactly how it is. She pulls no punches. She is Monica Haider, Vice President of Engagement. Monica, we are so happy to have you. Welcome to Power Forward.
Thank you.
Is that the intro you thought you were going to get?
No. I feel like engagement and tell it like it is are two different things. And we're not talking about engaging people, but
Right.
that it does relate to each other, I believe.
Well, it also shows you that, you can't really judge somebody based on their title or the way they appear. I mean, you have to get to know them, right?
Yeah, it's a big piece. Being engaged with people and talking and being genuine is a huge thing, and that's what builds you and your brand and your character.
Well, I want to get to that in just a moment. But first, when it comes to engagement, as you said in your title, being in engagement, running the engagement team, give our listeners an idea of what that team is.
Oh, that's a loaded question. There's a lot to that. So it's just about being in tune with what's going on around you more than anything. And it relates to the overall tone of the company and how we support it. So engagement here for us is a lot of things. It could be events, it could be community, it could be expressing your ideas and your opinions, it could be how we talk to our team members. It's all of that. And it's not just about our team. That flows throughout the whole entire company. And I think in your life, you have to be an engaging person to be somewhat successful.
And your team wants an engaged workplace,
Yeah.
right? You want everybody who
Yeah.
comes here every single day when you walk through those doors, you want them to feel like they are a big part of this place and feel like their opinion means something.
Yeah, you got to have energy, and that's the energy that we see here, like the vibe and what we do here. That's the precedent that kind of takes over who we are and our people, how our people feel every day. And for me, that's the most important piece, right? And some of that comes with giving direct feedback, just like you mentioned there, and having those tough conversations. But I almost feel like that's a disservice if you don't do that to somebody, and we can talk about that later. But that's a big piece of being engaged and getting constructive feedback to be successful, and that's what excites me and gets me pumped up here. And that's what I think most people thrive on here. I think their excitement and what they build in their own teams, and it just vibrates throughout the whole entire company, but it comes from the top down.
And I love it. I love the engagement team. I mean, they're big time here. And, I just, as I'm looking over at you, I think about the dance party.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how much fun everyone has at the dance party. And I was once at the dance party, and I tried to stay in the background, and Monica was trying to get me on the dance floor. She was pushing me out of my seat, telling me I got to get on the dance floor.
You know what? That's the greatest example of true engagement. So let me tell you that story. That dance party manifested over tireless hours of working in the closing and the ops teams and us just grinding every day to kind of meet commitment and be great every day. So what happened was one of our team members said, okay, we're going to take a break. Everybody's energy's low and you're getting down and we need to, wake people up. So how are we going to do that? And David Poppy, one of our greatest guys here, he was like, we're going to get some music going. We're going to do 5-minute lap right around the circle of the wing that we were on. And it started with one team, and then it went to the next, and then they started requesting songs. And literally,
Wow.
That is how it started. And it started every day for 5 minutes. They would get up, play some songs, and different teams would pick the songs, and that's how it manifested. I mean, it's the most epic story. Now it's turned into this evolution of like, people need a break. They need to get up and move around, and that's what we do. And we create this vibe to make people feel re-energized to go back and do great things at their desk. So, like, for me, that's one of the all-time favorite stories ever. And it was funny because I used to make fun of them and their dances as they would prance around the office but it was great just to see everybody come together and have some fun for 10 minutes and take away all the seriousness, because I think and for me, the biggest thing is you got to have fun while you're here. We work so hard, you got to have some fun. And that's what makes the difference, I think, between getting direct feedback and using that to get better and then having fun at work. Those things aren't usually paired together.
Right.
They're usually like, I can't talk to this person or stay in my lane. And that's not what we're about here. And that's the dynamic and the momentum that has created in itself is awesome. So I love hearing that. But
Every
because you
Thursday.
see it from the sidelines. Yeah.
I love the dance.
Yeah,
party.
not on the sidelines anymore. If you see him there, you drag his butt out onto the dance floor.
No standing on the sidelines.
I've seen
Please.
I've seen you do it to other people. You can definitely do it to Mateen.
If I can get out there and dance, he can get out there and dance. He probably got more rhythm than me.
I got you for the next one.
Okay.
I don't know if I've
floor.
seen you dance. I may have to check that out next time.
What about you, Justin?
You don't want to see me dance.
Yeah, he's on the sidelines. We got to get him out there.
Yeah.
Nah, wedding special occasions only. I'm gonna have to make myself incognito if I ever go and I see you there.
I love it.
I want to ask you, Monica, about brand. Because that's a word that you hear a lot at our company. Not just what our company's brand is, but individuals, team members. It's something that is really impressed upon people here, that you are responsible for your own brand. Before we dive into that, I want to ask you, what is brand to you?
Well, brand's a lot of things to a lot of people, and it means different things to people, is what I've realized over the years. And so brand for me, and what I hope to build brand on, is more on a personal note. Like companies, they have brands and logos, right? You think of a successful brand, what do you think of?
I would say Nike.
Okay, how about you?
Yep, Nike.
Yeah, like Coca-Cola. They leave legacies. They're memorable. Brand is kind of like, to me, your reputation. And everybody has a brand. And you might not know what your brand is. And you might not know what people think of you. But building that and trying to figure out what your brand is a whole nother, process in itself. But most people walk around here not knowing what their brand is, and perception is reality. That's what it is. And so I didn't know what I wanted my brand to be, and I didn't know what a brand was. All I knew is I wanted to be something great and do great things. But that's a very, very vague statement, right? You want to be great. What does that mean? How do you get there? How do you get those traits to be great? And so building a brand, to me, is all about your reputation and what you do with it. And then being aware enough to see what other people's opinions are of you and getting that feedback. That's the critical piece that most people miss. They think, oh, my brand is this, and I'm this, and I got this, and they don't really know what people think about them. So going out and getting that feedback and saying, hey, what do I need to be successful here? What are the expectations? What do you think of me? And do you think I'm a hard worker? And so to me, that's what is the core to a brand is, your true perception and what people think and the legacy and the reputation that you have.
And you actually have an exercise that you do, right, that helps people get that feedback, that helps them become self-aware if they're not already when it comes to their brand.
Yeah. And so that for me is the starting point, right, of getting feedback. And really all this is getting people out of the box and getting people uncomfortable, because I love that. Like, I like to work in an uncomfortable situation because that's the challenge and that's where I thrive.
Well, not me.
Yeah, I know, not you. He sits right next to me.
Okay.
He sees it.
Now we're going to get some stories.
Yeah, and you see it even in just developing people and leadership development itself. You got to get people outside of the box, and most of that is just fear and not knowing what their brand is. And once they figure that out, they're like, oh, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to ask this person for this. And it kind of breaks down all the barriers you need to kind of move forward and kind of build successful people. And that's a critical piece to us, is like building successful people here and getting those things identified so people can move forward. And the brand exercise does that. It defines, what people think of you. And I make them go back to their friends and family or people that they haven't worked with in years and say, what did you think about me? What was the first impression of me? What would you say your friends would say about me? And then they tell you. And then what you do is you don't find a bunch of bad stuff. You find common trends of people and their behaviors. And then they're like, oh, I never knew that about myself, or I didn't think that. And then they kind of work towards that. And then I make them create, what do you want your brand to be? What do you want to be known for? Who is it you want to build and be? And I think that's important for anybody in business, in college life, even in my personal life. Like, I have 3 different brands. I have my work brand, I have my mom brand, I have my wife brand, and people don't realize all of those things that kind of intertwine. And you got to know where you are in each one of those buckets and how you're perceived in order to be a successful wife, mother, whatever it is that you want to be. And those are important traits that I learned a long time ago. And I learned it from an exercise. I was in a leadership development course, and this is what woke me up. And we had to write on a wall where we saw ourselves in 5 years. And at that time, I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. And I was like, I put a big airplane on there. I want to be travel. I knew I wanted to have a couple kids. I had 6 kids up there, and I stopped at 3. I intended to stop at 2, but 6 kids was like, after the 3rd one, you're like done, right? You're like, ah! And God bless all those people who do have 6 kids, because managing that in itself. But we did this exercise, and it was like an awareness. What do you want to do to be successful, and what does that look like to you? And we had to draw it out. And it was for the company to align my values and what I wanted with their processes and where they saw themselves going. And it was an interesting concept, because it wasn't until then I was like, oh, the light clicked, and it said, that means you want to see if I fit in here and if I'm have the same values as you, and they're going to help me be successful in my personal life. And then the next exercise following that was, what does your support system for that look like? And how do you need the people to support you? And for me, that was like where I identified, oh my God, I need all these people. I got to tell them they're great to help build off my foundation and figure out what I want to do to be successful. And that's kind of how I built my brand. And then the second piece is who you're surrounded by, right?
Yep.
And what do you need to do? Negativity can't thrive in anybody's life who's successful. And people don't want to be around negative people. They want to be around problem solvers and people who like really dive into helping build themselves, because most people want to grow and talk about themselves and figure out how they're going to be successful. But if you help them do that and build those core fundamentals for them, it's amazing. And that little exercise changed my whole entire life and how I thought about things, and set my path for like, oh, I need to help other people do this. I need to build my core support team, whether that's at home, whether it's my babysitter, my parents, whoever it is, to work, my team. How do you build those support mechanisms to help those people grow, feel great about what they're doing, and then you build this successful empire? And that's what I feel like even we've done here at a very, very high level.
Oh, yeah, we definitely have. And it's funny, because Monica, she's big on brand. Trust me, big time.
Huge.
I met her, and probably 3 weeks in, baby, she was asking me, what is my brand to you? What do you think about me? And I was like, oh, wow,
She put you on the spot.
Put me right on the spot. But, I told her, she was a straight shooter, but great person. And so her brand rings bells around here. But we had the summer team members come in, and they were here probably a week. And she brought me over to the table, maybe 15, 20 kids there. And she said, well, I want you to ask my team, what's your brand? So I had to tell 10 or 15 kids what their brand was. But she gets it and she understands, because perception is everything. And I tell people this in business: if you're going for an interview, a guy, or if you're in an NBA or play sports, a coach or a leader or whoever's hiring should never have to question like your love for what you do, and that ties into your brand as well.
Yeah. My success, truly, and then some of the greatest success stories that I've heard are from people getting better because they took something and did something with it and kind of implemented the feedback that they got from somebody, or it changed their life. To me, those are the shining moments in my life. Like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I want to do. And it's the same thing. It has to do with culture, and that's really, your brand drives culture. It drives legacy. It drives a lot of things that people don't think about. And that one little exercise made me realize, like, oh, wow, you got to take all of these little pieces and figure out how to connect the dots.
It's interesting you talked about that exercise being that turning point for you, or that moment that was so big, because I was about to ask you, do you have a master's degree in psychology or did you get like a doctorate in sociology? Because this is just fascinating stuff. You really seem to have studied a lot over the years.
Yeah, no, I business has been my world, but I think for me, I grew up in my family's restaurant, right? I was working since I was 12 years old, and being a waitress or a dishwasher, it humbles you, but you get to see a lot. You see a lot of unhappy people that are hard to please. And so I learned quickly, like, you got to have a great work ethic and a great client service mindset to be able to please people and make money doing this, right? And so for me, I think the biggest takeaway is like finding those core components in your life. There's no psychology to it.
Right.
Psychology, I feel like I earned a psychology degree after 20 years here. And
I think we could get you a diploma.
Yeah, I think that would be great. But it's all about the people and how you interact with people. That's what psychology is really about. And you can use it to be a negative factor, or you can use it to be a positive factor. And for me, I choose positive because those are wins. Nobody wants to be around, people who aren't winners or trying to be winners or trying to get there. You want to be around all of that hype and excitement. And I think that's what's really important.
And experience is the best teacher, I think.
Yeah.
Having that experience. I remember giving a speech at Success Track when they came in, and I was talking about leadership, and I was so motivated about leadership and how do you lead people, how do you get people to follow you. And a guy was asked me a question. He was like, what books do you read? What leadership? I said, man, I feel bad because I don't have any books I can tell you to go read.
Right.
All of this is experience. These are things that I experienced in my life. So you having 20 years in the business, is that something that you kind of lean back on as your experience?
Not just 20 years in the business, 20 years in this business.
You
have been at this company for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think back to the point of your experiences, the journeys that you take and how you embrace change, those make a big difference on what you do. And so for me, I thrive in those areas because those are the challenges, right? Like I could never sit and do the same exact thing for 30 years. I have to be challenged and new ideas. And most people are like that. I think most people want that and want to be challenged. So when you give them all the tools that they need to be successful, they love it and they thrive versus, waiting to see what somebody's going to do. You got to test them and challenge them and put them to that. But back to the experiences, everything points back in my life. And when we were talking about initially doing this podcast, I did a lot of reflecting. And I think every leader that I ever worked with their work ethic was way better than mine. Way better than mine. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And they might have been a little crazy or a little psychotic, and they might have been fun or great or even negative. But the experiences that you gain from working with people like that, that's irreplaceable. That is priceless to me. And if you can work under difficult people and learn how to maneuver and be great, I mean, what better win is that? Like, for me, that's like goal scored. Yes, he likes me, or I did something great.
It feels good.
Those are the moments that people thrive off of. That's the experience, and that's the feeling that I want people to get, are those wins and that feeling that you get when you overcome like a really challenging moment. So yeah, experience has a lot to do with it.
If there's somebody who wants to know, how do I build my brand? If I'm starting from scratch with a clean slate, what are the most important things I should be thinking about? What would you tell that person?
You got to define what you want to be, number one. What does that look like to you in your head? Write it down, plan it out, chart it, like this exercise I did a long time ago. And then you need to get feedback. That's the first step. Find out what people really think and be honest with yourself. Don't say, oh, well, no, that's not really true and he must misunderstand me. No, take it like it's the law, and take it and write what you're going to do to correct it. Because anybody who's successful is coachable, right? We do it every day. We got to make sure we're getting our feedback. We're looking at every play we do. Being in sports, it's a big thing. Anything in your life relates to these core fundamentals. And those are the major things that you need to do to kind of start to define what your brand is. And a brand can change over time. Like, I don't want my brand to be the same that it was 20 years ago. I want to be a better person every day. And if you're good at this, you'll get a really good, flow of like who you are and where you stand. And then you'll say, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this. And you'll change your brand just based on lifestyle changes or your age or where you are in your life. And maybe it's like, okay, now it's time to get married. What does that look like? And it sounds crazy to kind of plan that stuff out, but most people don't and wind up in situations that they wish they weren't in. And I would plan for what you want your brand to be and how do you build a culture with that, because that's going to define you and that's going to define your successes and your journeys, I think.
That's some powerful stuff.
And I don't know. You guys
Sorry, I've been writing all this down.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good stuff, man. And now, having daughters, is that something that you talk to them about? Do you talk to them about branding? Because they're a little younger. These are not grown daughters. So do you talk to them, at an early age about
all the time
brand? Especially
now. Social media has put a whole nother thing on brand and who you are. And people have different personalities at work than they do. And it goes back, and that's okay. But what do you want that to look like? And so I talk to my daughters and even anybody that I'm interacting with, like college students. This is really important for you because this defines where it takes you. You're either going to be a successful individual or you're going to be a high school student who's stuck in a rut because of their brand. And like, who do you want to be? And so I talk to my daughters all the time, like, what does that look like for you? You might think you want to hang out with the cool kids, but what do the cool kids do? And do you want to be known for the things that they do or that group? Do you want to be known as that type of person? And then I talk to them about social media. Like, for me, it's about being a good person. And you can do good with social media or you can do really bad with it. I mean, the things these kids do that I see today, and, you can snap a text and shoot a picture and say, look what this person said about you. And your life could be over. That's like bullying in high school or whatever it is that they call it. They use it for so many different things now today. That scares the crap out of me. Like, you could really do some damage early on with social media and the things that they are. So I'm constantly coaching them up about that. And then even the way they dress, right? Like, it has a big way of perception is reality. And so how you dress, I talk to them about that all the time because those are changing. Like, you don't have to fit in with the crowd. And that's another thing. Like, I look back in my childhood, and I had a brand of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to wear, but I didn't care about what the other people did. I hung out with everybody, And so for me, I always liked hanging out with people, and they were interesting to me. And so I didn't care if they were like the jocks or, the headbangers, whoever they were. Like, I wanted to be friends with everybody. And I could never understand that in high school of like, oh, if you were in this group, you couldn't talk to you, or your friends weren't talking to you if you hung out with these people. And now I understand it more because it relates. It's sad, but perception is everything. And you can be good with people and be a good person and still keep a clean brand. And so, yeah, it's important to talk to your kids about these things.
Let me ask you this. You ever ask your kids about your brand as a mom?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not surprised.
My kids are, very fluid with, I have an open dialogue with them. And for the most part, I want them to have good conversations with me. But I also want to know what they think of me as a mom. And to them, it's very important that my son will come up to me, I don't like that outfit. You need to change it. Oh, yeah. And he's 10 years old. And so to me, that's important. And how your kids want to interact with you has a lot to do with what your brand is. And you'll know as a parent, like, oh, I don't want to hang out with you. Can you just go away, Mom? I don't want to be that mom. I want to be the mom driving all the girls around, having fun and creating it, but still like having those coaching moments with them. To me, that's important. And I never had that. Like, I have a very strict household. And today, my parents never talk to me about half the stuff that I've talked to my kids about. And I think that's critical because it's just like a job, right? If you don't coach your people up, you don't give them the guidance. And so I think for a lot of us, our parents didn't do that when we were younger. And if they did, it was very few and far between or wasn't talked about. But for me, it's the most important thing. You got to coach your kids up on how to deal with situations today and so that they can create their brand and learn how to maneuver out of bad situations and move into good ones.
Like you were doing with your son.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Super important.
Yeah, definitely on him. And you mentioned a little earlier about feedback. And I think sometimes as leaders, we kind of run away from giving feedback because we don't want to hurt feelings. But sometimes I think it can help when you're giving that direct feedback or feedback that's going to help whoever you're talking to.
Right. No. For the most part, I find people are scared to give you feedback as a leader.
Why? Yeah.
Right? I don't know why. Like, they're worried.
Is it just human nature because you're worried you're going to offend somebody or hurt their feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, you guys all have leaders you report to. Do you always tell them the 100% truth or the raw truth? And I think that's where everybody falls into this trap of like, oh, should I say something or shouldn't I say something? It's how you deliver the message that is the most important piece. Yeah. And for me, you should just be a good person and say, hey, did you know this? I want to help you. And I don't know if you know this. I'm just giving you this information. I don't think that, but here's what somebody may have said about you. And I think that's so important to do to people, to let them know so they can correct it, right? Like, if you don't know what you don't know, I'll never forget. Somebody came to me one time, one of my leaders, and they said, Monica, you know this person doesn't like you, right? And I was like, what do you mean? I just had this person over to my house. I was just out with them. Like, how are you telling me that? And I was like, you don't know the whole story. And they're like, no. And so I went back and I said, okay, obviously I'm doing something. I got to find out what this is because I don't want people in my life like that. And especially as you get older, you're like, okay, I want to choose to be around great people or positive people, and you value your time a little bit more. And so I did a lot of self-reflecting, and I went back and I figured it out. Yep, she probably doesn't like me because of this. She probably wanted this role that I moved into, and nobody explained it to them. And I think that's where anybody in business or in your home life, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I think those pieces are missing in explaining the why, or just letting that person know, like, hey, we're moving this person into this role and why, and I might have something else for you. It's just not the right time for you. To me, that's the critical feedback that people know, instead of like making it a feel-good moment of like, oh, we're going to ignore that and we're going to promote this person, or we're going to give this person an iPhone and not this one, whether it's your kid or whoever it is.
Oh, yeah. And I look at it, it's a good indication if you have a good team, good company, if you can give direct feedback and not worry about how they're going to take it, or if someone that's receiving it, they know you're only giving them feedback because you want them to be better.
Yeah.
As a team, we want to win as a team. And I think that's when you have a great company or a great team, those are the intangibles that all great companies and all great teams have.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with telling them you're not ready now. Here's where I see you.
Right.
Or this play doesn't work right now for you.
And as a receiver, not taking it personal.
Yeah, and say, I'm going to help you get to the next thing, though. And if you know somebody's goals and where they want to go, back to that exercise that I did, if the company knows where you want to be and what you want to do, they know you're going to help them, right? Like my job as a leader is to help them get there.
Yep.
Not forget about them and put somebody else in their place. It's help them get there. How do you get that person better so that they can be in that role? And for that person, how do I self-reflect? Why didn't I get the role? What is it that I needed to do to be better, to be able to be eligible for that? Or maybe my leader sees something greater for me and I don't know it. It's hard to get them there, but that's the whole purpose of a brand exercise, right? Is to get you more self-aware and know where you stand in whatever it is, whatever phase it is of your life, whatever phase of your career it is. Where do I stand and how do I need to get to the place that I want to go?
And you brought this up, earlier. A lot of it really is in the approach, right? It's the way that your leader or your teammate is communicating with you, even if it is a conversation that's not the easiest one to have. For leaders out there, or aspiring leaders for that matter, what is the best way to have that approach where if you have to have a tough conversation with somebody, they'll walk away from it saying, you know what, I know they were telling me that for my own good. I know it came from a good place and they truly want me to get better.
So there's three pieces to that. One is you got to be credible as a leader, right?
Good point.
And so you got to your team's got to know that you have their back, good, bad, or indifferent, okay? You make a mistake, it's okay. You forgive them, you show them success and how to get there. You got to have credible credentials as a leader. And I think we talk about that all the time when we talk about leadership capital and how do we build that. That's an important piece, and that's the first step. Then you got to be genuine about it, right? You got to really care about your people. And for me, you got to dive into what people like and how they like to be recognized and what motivates them. And we talk about that all the time. And I don't feel like there can ever be enough exercises on that. But how do people want to be recognized and what is your audience? Because how I talk to you is completely different about how I'll talk to Justin, and the audience matters, and the way that they need to receive feedback is really critical to whether you make it or break it, because you could lose your credibility just like that in delivering a bad message. And I've made the mistake before. I've had good intentions, but not delivered the message in a great way. And that ruins it. And you have to do 10 times more work to clean up that mess than you do just crafting your message and really knowing your audience. So be genuine in that, and then show up. Show up for the tough moments, right? Everybody has tough moments. You got to show up and you got to fight through those tough moments with that person, or help show them the rope to success. And that's the most important follow-up piece. If you don't follow up on any of it, you really don't mean it. And then that goes back to not being genuine.
And I'm glad you talked about that, because a lot of people, you cannot give direct feedback and it be received well if you don't build that capital.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's impossible. And I think that's one of the main pieces in giving direct feedback, or, that's very important as leaders. We have to understand that and know that if you care about the people that you're leading, if you get to know everything about the people that you're leading, that odd conversation is not going to be so odd because you've built that capital with them.
The other thing too is I think we get confused sometimes and okay, we all got to deliver this message, okay? And then everybody goes and delivers it in a different way. And that's okay, because I think your leadership style has a lot to do with your team and reflection and how they like to receive messages. But it can't all be this like blanket thing. You got to add your own flair and your own thing. And you got to collaborate with your team on these things too. The messages like, hey guys, this is the message. This is the plan. How are we going to do this? And they got to walk through the fire with you. And you got to get people to raise their hand and want to be that person to kind of help you move along.
Yeah.
And that's how they build their own success too.
Open lines of communication too. That's the other thing that came to mind for me when you were just going over that list of things. You know, if you're transparent with somebody and you keep them in the loop, they're going to take things better, right? Just by nature, if they know what's going on, you know, they may disagree with one decision or something you decide to do that maybe is not what they had in mind exactly. But if you're keeping them in the loop, if you communicate with them, that's got to put you in a better position to succeed.
Yeah, I think when we don't do that, that does more damage and people don't understand. And it goes back to the why behind things. And we think, oh, the why is because that's the play, right? No, that's not the play. And people want to understand. And just like if you were on a basketball team, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to run the play, but why wouldn't we do it this way? And then the coach may decide to change it in the middle of the game. And that's another thing, too. Being adaptable to change. People receive change as a negative. And sometimes their change and their success, they look at change as a negative, in a negative way. And so they don't see the light behind it. And if you don't explain the why behind it and you don't have that communication, then your team member's lost. And or your partner or your kid or whoever it is, they're lost. And so I always have to go through 5 channels of communication. Like 5 is my number. I do it with my husband. I do it with my kids. I do it with my team. And that way everybody's crystal clear. And if not, it's going to cause questions for them to come and talk to me, right, about it. And that's the goal, right? The open dialogue, when we talk about being transparent and having open dialogue, I think the biggest piece of that is allowing people to have that path to get there. How do you get them there, especially the ones who aren't talking? How do you get them to your desk to say, hey, look, can I ask you why we're doing something like this? Or, because most people won't do it. They won't. They'll just say, okay, this is the way it is, and that's what it is, and I guess I have to go along with it. But sometimes I regret doing that because my daughters will be like, well, you said I could come and challenge the process. So I was like, okay.
The floodgates open.
You're right. Well, this process has to take a break. That's what I tell them. Let me take a break and think about it.
That's funny. And you talked about, explaining the why. And I've been around some leaders that sometimes get mad when the why is questioned. Do you encourage some of your team members that you lead to always question the why when you kind of giving them the game plan?
Yeah, and it's almost, it's really critical on my team because if we don't, like an event could go sideways. I always ask everybody poke a hole in something. Try to poke a hole in something that I'm doing. Because if you do that, then it's going to come off flawless, right? Because I'm going to expect every scenario to happen. And that's kind of our world in engagement. Like change is critical, and being able to move, in a moment's notice is really important for us. So I'm always encouraging them to come and poke holes in the process or poke holes and ask why. Because sometimes I might turn it around too and I might say, well, what would you do if you were me? Or what would you do? And it makes them just talk through that process, and then they don't even need me. And I say, see, you don't even need me. Go do it yourself. But it's those little moments of empowerment like that when you do something like that builds people to build their confidence. And ultimately that brand, or that whole thing and how you feel gives you that momentum to go forward. And that's what I want them to do out of those types of situations more than anything. Not just challenge the why. I want them to think about it.
I like that.
I'm glad you brought up being willing to adapt to change and kind of react at a moment's notice and be ready for change, because I had the opportunity to spend some time with your team when I was going through our rotational program. And I remember we were working on a project, and we were going to present, right, to a medium-sized group, I'll call it. And we were, pretty much wrapped up with it. But I remember walking into your office one day, and something had happened, and you basically said, you guys will be ready to present this tomorrow, right? And I think for a moment, myself and a couple of my colleagues were kind of like, wait, did she just say tomorrow? And I think we were just kind of like, yeah, of course we'll be ready.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't, you know, maybe not 100% ready, but to me, it was almost like the way that we react to this situation is going to show you as much as the presentation itself. You know, being ready to change, being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I remember that
about
spending time on your team, and that was it left something. It left it definitely made an impression on me just about the way that you can kind of show your true colors as a team member.
Yeah. And so that's awesome to hear, because that is the intent. And everybody thinks everything has to be perfect all the time, and it doesn't. And some of those moments I do purposely, because it's important for people who want to be successful that sometimes you get in the way of asking too many questions and you can't make a decision. And so you just got to go. And that was one of those moments. And you guys did stellar with that presentation, by the way. I remember it was a Shark Tank one.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you guys did great with that. And that's the whole purpose, is like, okay, put together what you think it should be and put your best effort forward, because then I can see what you're doing, and then we can improve upon from there. And there was few things that you guys needed to do. You had so many great ideas, but people question themselves so many times about different little things that they just need a push to move forward. And I think that's important, you know, in building your confidence and getting you where you need to go. So that's awesome.
So she was testing us. The truth finally comes out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love it. That's my favorite part of my job.
Well, I see. That's interesting you mentioned that, because I would have thought the favorite part of your job is organizing amazing events that we have. And for those that aren't familiar, we have some amazing events here. Our holiday parties are legendary. We do a fair every year for every team member and their families. We have a huge Halloween event where everybody gets to come with their kids and they go trick-or-treating throughout the building. What is it like for you being behind the scenes with all of those events?
It is organized chaos, really. And it's change. I mean, in a moment's notice, you don't know what's going to happen. And there's so many stories behind the scenes of things that have happened in an event that you would never notice because you don't know what's coming. And that's the greatest thing about it, I guess I could say. The greatest thing about an event is nobody knows what to expect. They know what it was last year, but they don't know what's going to happen this year. So nobody knows the flaws that I'll know or the team will know and what they manifested this event to be, right? So funny things are just moments that you like, okay, what am I going to do in this moment? And it's how you react to them. It's what you just said. Reaction is everything. And how you react in certain situations defines you as a person and who you are and how you recover from things. And I'll never forget one year, an artist was supposed to be there on a Thursday.
For the holiday party.
Yep. And it was a big group, so I thought everybody was there. And the manager says, well, this flight's delayed. And the flight got delayed and delayed more. Up until probably an hour before the holiday party started.
Any knots in your stomach at this point?
Oh, I was having heart palpitations, throwing up, trying to figure out what I was going to do, who was going to dress up to look like this person. I mean, a million thoughts went through my head. But those are moments that you got to figure out what you're going to do. And you're going to make the best of it. The good thing is maybe a handful of people knew what was going to happen at that moment. And then if it doesn't, what do you do? Right? And so we always try to plan for the what ifs. Okay, backup plan is this. Plan B is this. And so we always have to come up with creative ways. But for the most part, you see a lot of stuff that people do and how they react. And you need to get them to move on a moment's notice and kind of move forward. And sometimes those are difficult conversations like, no, I paid you for this. You're going to get out there and do this right now. And so we live and we survive through those moments, and we learn what not to do. But for the most part, the team does an amazing job. Everybody thinks it's easy, right? They're like, oh, I want to come on the events dance team. It's so fun over there. And I'm like, yeah, come on over. I'm going to show you how easy it is.
I wish you guys could see how she's looking.
Yeah,
when
it's
she's
so
telling.
fun. No, but it's funny. It's a funny thing because everybody who comes and does work with us, like even you're like, oh my gosh, this amount of detail that goes in. I mean, we plan out minute by minute on our playbook for some event, and our timeline is literally 7 to 10 pages long, depending on the size of event. So each minute is slotted out for each piece of entertainment, each action item that has to happen, checking in on somebody. The whole event staff, I feel like if you run an event, you can run a business, basically, because you have to do a lot of coordination and you have to figure out ways to make it work no matter what happens.
Well, before we have our next event, let me be the driver. I want to go pick the artist up. Okay. Whoever that is, I just want to pick him up from the airport.
He's got some connections, by the way. He's got some connections himself in the music industry. You'll have to talk to him.
I'm going to sign him up for some tasks that he's going to be like, what am I doing?
See what you opened yourself up to?
I love it. Thank you for volunteering.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I feel like we're all a little more self-aware. We know more about our brand and what we hope it to be, and I know that if it's not what we hope it is, you're going to tell us.
Yeah.
So
no, I'll be nice about it, I swear. But thank you for having me. Just continue to be great and do great things here and support one another, and that's all we can do to kind of make us great and better people every day. So thank you.
Great stuff, Monica. Thank you for sharing your story. To make sure you never miss an episode of Power Forward, subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And look for new episodes every other week featuring inspirational stories of success. I'm Justin White. We'll see you next time on Power Forward.